Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. It's been a week off. We didn't meet last week. I was out of town, and a break sounded good to everybody. So we're back and hopefully refreshed and ready to talk a lot of sports today. And we're going to talk a lot of football and a lot of basketball today. So that's the main agenda for tonight. um, so jumping in, it was my turn for a memory and all that, and so um, technically it feels weird to do this before Cody's PTI. We're gonna have some PTI questions, but I really thought about one of Cody's PTI questions, which we'll get to later. But and so I based it off of that, and I wanted to talk about the Michigan and Appalachian State game that happened September 1st of 2007. A long time ago. Appalachian State now is in the FBS, but they were Division II at the time. They were FCS, and they came into the Big House, University of Michigan, and they had a great game there. They were surprising a lot of Michigan fans and the Michigan players. Obviously, they went up at one point 28-14 in the third quarter, and Michigan was not number 3 in the country, by the way, at this time. They were ranked number 3. This is the first game of the season, so kind of don't know where some teams are necessarily, but expected to be really good. And so the Michigan came back. They took the lead on a touchdown run by Mike Hart. And got the ball back and went down to try to take some time off the clock. Field goal blocked, and so they're only up by one or two. I can't remember. And then Appalachian State goes down, and they are able to kick a field goal with 14 seconds left on the clock or something like that. Maybe a little more than a minute, maybe 30 seconds, something like that. Anyway, they go up by 1 or 2. Michigan gets the ball. Chad Henne is the quarterback, and he throws it about 40 yards down the field, and they get into field goal range. And everyone in the stadium is like, well, this is a horrible way to win this game, but at least we won it. So they send out their kicker, and it gets blocked. Again, the second blocked field goal of that game. And Appalachian State celebrates. It's the biggest ever upset at that time of any college football game ever. An FCS team coming in and beating number 3 Michigan in the Big House. And so wanted to get your reactions of that. I believe all of us know about that game, or watched it or something at that time, 2007. Kind of want to get your reaction of that game and what it meant to fans to see a Division II team win that kind of game on the road.
Definitely that kind of team. The people that were on that Michigan team, you never expected to lose to a team like Appalachian State, right? And I think it just speaks to the importance of focusing as much as you can on every play. Because with 2 blocked field goals, and especially the one at the very end there, I think it just speaks to the heart of a team like Appalachian State that just didn't give up in that game and was willing to make a play till the very last second. And that pass interference that was called on Manningham, almost like it made you feel like, oh, this game is over. So I wanted to kind of repeat that. I agreed with you, and even in watching the highlight, it was like, oh, they ought to get this, and then just to be able to block that. What an amazing play by a guy I'm sure, isn't in the NFL or whatever, but he gets to tell his kids and grandkids about that moment in college football,
Yeah.
Everybody loves an upset story. That's great. And I think it's important to remember, they're playing by the same rules out there. There's nothing different about the rules, nothing different about the equipment, playing with the same ball. It's when the whistle blows, it's 100% fair. There's absolutely no advantage to the Goliath at that point. And so whether it's Appalachian State or anybody, they just remember hey, there's no advantage anymore. None at all. We're all playing by the same rules, and be able to keep that in mind and not get in their heads and just go out and play football. And so that's what they did. looking at some of the stats, like it was an evenly matched game. They had pretty similar passing yards, rushing yards, turnovers, time of possession, everything. Both teams played well, and it just so happened that with a little bit of great timing, Appalachian State was able to get that block and pull off the win, and it's set a precedent for upsets to happen like that again.
Ready?
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Justin, on almost everything you said. That everyone loves an upset. Everyone loves like an underdog, that kind of story. And that's something that makes football, or any sport really, football so exciting. And the only thing I think I would disagree with you on is, at least in that game, you said that once the whistle blew, there was no disadvantage. They were at Michigan, right? I think they were at Michigan. It was a home game for them, and so there is an advantage to the home field, home field advantage, at least in college football. I don't feel like that exists in the NFL really, but in college football there is that. But when you can play well enough, you take the crowd out of it. That's when it's that kind of even feel, and I love that because it's this idea that although a team may have better talent or better coaching, it's these people who are they're athletes. They're all athletes and they're doing their best. And sometimes somebody's best is better than someone's mediocre that day. So and I do love that.
Yeah. Just to comment on one last thing, and again on what Dustin said about there not being an advantage when that kickoff happens at the beginning of the game. Even when you have an upset like this, a Division II beating a top-ranked team, you think that top-ranked team thinks they have an advantage, right? They go out there when you have that kind of upset, that team believes that they can sleepwalk through the game and win. And when you do that, you get the possibility of getting upset. You think that if Michigan went into that game preparing like they were playing Ohio State, they probably beat Appalachian State, but they weren't going in that way. They didn't have a great season that year. They weren't as good as the number 3 team, but they were still supposed to beat Appalachian State by like 40 points, and they lost. And so you gotta understand that, but also you gotta, like Yancey said about these Appalachian State kids, the quarterback went to the NFL. He was the only guy that from that team that went to the NFL, but he didn't play quarterback. He played wide receiver in the NFL. But no one else knows any name on that roster at Appalachian State. No one knows any of the names of those guys that did the guy that blocked the kick at the end. No one knows who that is really, except the guys that were on that team. And that's something that we've talked about in college basketball before, Dustin in particular, is that these guys in the NCAA tournament that are from these tiny little schools, they're getting on that stage of playing the biggest game of their lives. And in this case, for Appalachian State, this was their absolute Super Bowl. They get to go play at the Big House in front of 100,000 fans. This is everything that they dreamed of. Even though they're not playing for Michigan, they're playing in the Big House, and they get to win that game. Those guys are able to tell their wives, their kids, their grandkids eventually that I played college football in the Big House against Michigan, and I won. And that's just the magic of those kind of upsets. So, anything else about that? Okay. Let's talk basketball for a little bit. NBA in particular. We'll talk about college basketball a little bit later, but we wanted to make sure we talk a basketball minute every podcast now that the season is going. So let's talk about the NBA. Again, no rotation. If you have something to say about things going on in the NBA, let's talk about it.
Yeah, my big one is to talk about is the Cavs. 13-0. They've started off 13-0. They have not lost this season. I looked up. They are the 6th team in NBA history to start 13-0. 2 of those teams were back in the 40s and 50s. Don't need to worry about them, but they're the fourth team in the modern era. And you may find it interesting who the other three teams are. It was the 92-93 Rockets who
Won the championship. No, they didn't.
They got beat by the Suns in the
Okay.
playoffs, I believe. And the Suns went on to lose to
The Bulls.
Jordan and the Bulls. The other team was the 03 Mavericks, who got beat by the Lakers in the playoffs, if I remember right. And the Lakers went on to win the finals. And then the other team was the 2015-16 Warriors, who went to the finals and lost to the Cavaliers, to the LeBron Cavaliers. And so starting 13-0 has, at least in the modern era, has not produced a championship. And so be interesting to see what Cleveland can do. 13-0 sounds fantastic, but it's roughly 1/6 of the way through the season. And so if they lost every game, they'd have historically one of the worst records of all time. So it's great, but they still got a lot of work ahead of them to go.
Yeah, I look at their. I did a little bit of research on the Cavs too to understand what was going on there, and they've just rolled through some teams like the Warriors, who had been really good this season so far. They won by 20, but they had like a 45-point lead in the third quarter or something like that, and so they're just running through teams. The other thing I looked at, they played 4 preseason games. Do you know what their record was in the preseason?
I'm going to guess 0-4.
0-4. So, what does preseason do? Same thing in the NFL. It means absolutely squat. I understand the need to play your rookies and to understand all that, and I think that's important for those guys that may not ever play in a pro league. But preseason means absolutely nothing. So.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting stat to bring up, that the only, the teams that have those long stretches don't historically perform well in the playoffs. I wonder if that's kind of an energy thing. Like you exerted so much that early and everybody expects you to keep that going, that you make choices a little different than you normally would if you've dropped a couple here and there. And so that was an interesting point to bring up. I'd like to say shout out to the Thunder, the Warriors, and the Nuggets. Only have 2 losses, right? Except for the Nuggets having 3. So kind of the top 4 teams there early, and the 3 that kind of have some losses there. I think really I would just say that those are my early picks for playoff contenders for sure. And then I think the Cavs will end up slipping later, because we'll see that same thing carrying on once they end up playing against the Celtics a couple of times.
Yeah, I think they beat the Celtics once in this round, right?
Yeah, so, I think they did beat the Celtics once already. That was a very close game, if I remember. Yeah, it's interesting. They're going to be interesting to watch, if they can be one of the teams that wins 60 games, in a season, which, that's usually very good news. As a 60-win team is usually very good, very telling. The 2015-16 Warriors won 70. They were 73-9, greatest record in NBA history, 73-9, and then was up 3-1 against the Cavs. And LeBron James and the Cavs won 3 games in a row to win the finals, and so that there's just so much history there. Another basketball minute I bring up is what's going on with Bronny James. So he got officially sent down to the G League, and then the G League team, the South Bay Lakers, announced that he would only play in home games, that he would not travel with the team, but only play in home games, which I don't understand how any of that works. And is
that a choice?
I have no idea. I believe that he is an adult. And so I don't know why he's being treated this way. And it's kind of unfortunate and unfair to him that he's being treated in such a way that he was made as a PR stunt, and now that he's down here, they're just slowly going to wait until they cut him off the team or something like that, or keep him as a PR stunt in LA. But I hope that he can have some playing time and actually prove that he belongs in the G League.
Yeah. The two quick things I wanted to mention was just the news of Greg Popovich for the Spurs. He had a stroke.
Oh man!
And so the Spurs announced that he had to leave the team for a medical condition, and they recently announced, I think yesterday, that it was a stroke, and so he'll be. They said he's not done for the year or anything, but he could be back, but it may take a little bit for him to get back. I mean, he's 73. Something like that. So, one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach in NBA history, just for what he's done. But yeah, he had some health problems. The other thing, less health related, is what is going on with the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 2-9.
I was just going to mention that.
They're bad, and we all had most of us had pretty high hopes for what the 76ers would do with Joel Embiid and Paul George and what's the name of their point guard? I can't remember his name right now. But they're just bad, and they're losing these games, most of them in pretty embarrassing fashion. They lost to the Pistons by 10, and the Pistons are bad. They lost to the Raptors by 10. They lost to the Grizzlies by almost 30. So it's not looking good in Philadelphia. And so, yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Philadelphia.
What's that, Cody?
So it's not sunny in Philadelphia.
That's right.
Real quick, since I haven't mentioned a whole lot, I wanted to go back to Cleveland since I didn't get a chance to pitch in there. And I was going to ask a question, but Dustin kind of answered it, I think. I was going to say, has there ever been a time in NBA history that a team has gone undefeated? I think you said 73-9 or something. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 73-9. The
73-9.
Warriors only lost 9 games the whole season.
And I think I was just gonna say, I think the best postseason record was 15-1. The Lakers went 15-1 or 16-1, I guess, to win the NBA Finals. They only lost 1 game that whole playoffs, but yeah.
And I was gonna say, I mean, obviously we know how hard it is to go undefeated in the NFL. I can only imagine how hard it would be in the NBA when you have 82 games. 82 games. 82. So I can only imagine. I mean, only losing 9 games is phenomenal. So I guess I was wondering that because the way Cleveland is playing right now makes you wonder how many more games can they win until they lose a game, since no one's ever gone undefeated. It's only time will tell, right?
Yeah, I think the 2016 Warriors got to 27 or 20, something like that, before they lost, and so that was more than a third of the season before that. So that was pretty significant.
Almost a quarter.
Do you think, Dustin, that they have the depth to get that? Anyway, I don't personally think that they are that structured of a team to make it that far. But where do you think they start to kind of lose that momentum? Because I think it's a depth chart issue for me personally.
Yeah, their bench is fine. I think their depth is fine. They're not a team that has poured all of their money into one player. Mitchell is obviously very highly paid, but he's not commanding 35% of the salary like some other teams are. The LA Clippers, for example. And so they have some depth. They do have that there. I think that as just injuries will start to take its toll, no team goes unscathed. That they're going to have to figure out some rotation things in order to keep going, and they're going to lose a game here and there as a result. And I'm not going to say it's going to snowball, because I still think they're capable of winning 60 games, but I don't expect this to be the first 74-18. I think
right.
60-22 is fantastic.
I was going to say the same thing about injuries. Yeah, I look at their roster right now, and Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are both kind of banged up, and those are their two front court starters. It says that they're both day to day, but injuries happen, and then when you don't have perhaps two or three of your best players, you're more prone to lose a few games. So cool. Anything else about the NBA? Okay.
The Thunder, like you said, are doing well in the last two games, but they just lost Chet, I think, for 8 or 10 weeks with a significant injury. I forgot. But so it'll be interesting to see how he does, how the Thunder do without him, and then when he comes back.
Yeah, that's a big deal. He offers a lot to that team, in my opinion. He helps them play a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's talk football. We haven't talked in 2 weeks, and so there's a lot of football to talk about. But again, no order. Just if you have stuff, let's shout it out. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start with a couple of stats that I thought were just really funny. I love finding stats that are this is the first time ever, or this is the first time since 1927, or whatever it is, that are just really funny to talk about. And so the two that I wanted to bring up was, did you know that in the history of the NFL, there's only been 2 instances where a quarterback has thrown for 400 plus yards, 4 plus touchdowns, no interceptions, and had multiple 40-yard plays in the same game and lost that game? There's only been 2 instances. Those 2 times were Joe Burrow against the Ravens this year and Joe Burrow against the Ravens this year. So,
no way.
So Joe Burrow, the Bengals lost to the Ravens both times, and Joe Burrow put up those kind of numbers, and they lost both games. And that's the only time a team has lost, when a quarterback puts up those kind of numbers. So
tells you how their defense is. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Rough.
That's a great stat.
So.
I saw another fun stat that I'll put on top of that.
Yeah.
So remember when Caleb Williams was drafted, that he texted the punter they drafted and said something like, "Hey, you're not going to play much. You're not going to punt more."
Yeah.
The punter has punted for more yards than Caleb Williams has thrown.
I'd be texting him that back, bro, in the stat list. Like, what's up, man? You're overworking me, dog.
I also have a stat about Caleb Williams too. And that was another one. And this one was it was shared on social, so some of you may have seen it as well. But it was, so since 2000, I think was the time that they were looking at this. There have been 468 quarterbacks that have thrown, that are in the stat, that have thrown for, that have a completion percentage for throwing 20 yards or more down the field, right? So completion percentages of throws 20 or more yards down the field. 468 quarterbacks since 2000 that have that stat. Caleb Williams is ranked 468 in that completion percentage. So
that's since 2000. So we're talking about Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Johnny Manziel.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right, we're talking about some historical busts. To comment on that, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be a bust of that caliber. I think that it's his rookie year, and Chicago is putting everything on his shoulders. Like, they have so many weapons, and they're not utilizing them very well at all. It's all on Caleb trying to throw them downfield, and so they need to figure out their offense, their playbook, and simplify it. So because it's just too much right now.
Yeah, they just fired their OC. Yeah.
I was going to say, as a Seahawks fan, I know what the issue is. Shane Waldron. We're over here going, it took you long enough.
Yeah. So they just fired Shane Waldron, so new offensive coordinator in Chicago. Also, we haven't talked about it since last week, but the Saints fired Dennis Allen after last week's huge loss, or 2 weeks ago, huge loss, and then they come back with their coordinator and they win. They win their first game with their new interim head coach. And I like to share some stories that they share after the game with press conferences. And I think his name is Rizzi, something like that. Darren Rizzi, I think his name is, the interim head coach. And the first thing he says when he joins the press conference after winning that game is, he said, "I thought it was going to be a really bad day because I came into the office and I had to go to the bathroom and I clogged the toilet."
Jeez.
So that's what he talks about. So I clogged my toilet, and so it's not going to be a good day. And says, but we won, and so
Pretty down to earth dude, though. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So that was funny. What else do we have to talk about? NFL or college?
I have one other thing I wanted to bring up. It was kind of almost opposite of Joe Burrow and the Bengals going on right now, and I think a lot of us saw it, but.
Cody's having connective issues.
Yeah, I think that's still taking over.
Issues.
Frozen on us.
But we'll get him back here momentarily, I'm sure. I hope. But
yeah.
What else?
I have something. I think, Scott, I don't remember if you mentioned it on podcast or offline about the Lions being, in your opinion, the best team in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And do you still agree with that opinion?
Yeah, I do. They kind of struggled a little bit. Obviously, 5 interceptions from Jared Goff, but they still win the game. I think the Lions are the most complete team in the NFL. Whether or not they're the best team, you bring other considerations into that. But yeah, I think they're the most complete team with that offense, running the ball, passing the ball, a really good defense, and a good head coach. I think they're still set up for the most success this season. Cody, are you back with us? Let's go back to.
For now, I am. We'll see how long that lasts. But I think you finished what I was saying. But that, Jared Goff threw 5 picks in that game, and yet they still won the game. That just shows how good that defense is, for one, but also just how complete the offense is able to adjust with that. That's just really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have call it a rant or rebuttal voting for your Lions thing. Like you did say, most complete team, which I think is probably good phrasing, because the Chiefs are obviously the best team in the NFL because they're 9-0. Like, they have not lost. They're the best team in the NFL, and they keep winning games. I guess Dodd's thing is, it's not been pretty. They're having to win by blocking field goals, and most games that they've won by just a couple of points. But until they put Andy Reid in a bikini and put a tiara on his head, pretty don't matter. You just got to win games.
I like that.
That's a good one.
I mean, record-wise, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have an excellent defense, probably the best defensive coordinator in NFL history, in Steve Spagnuolo, and what they're doing with that defense, that kind of bailing him out of games. And there is something that has to be said for being able to win close games when it matters. And the Chiefs have had to do that 9 games in a row, when a close game. And there's teams that buckle under that pressure. There's teams that make those mistakes at the end of games, and the Chiefs aren't one. They do not make the mistake at the end of the game. And a lot of teams do. And so there is that sort of mentality that the Chiefs have that other teams don't. Because if it's a close game, it's like back in the New England Patriots Tom Brady days. If it's a close game and Patrick Mahomes has the ball at the end of it, it's a problem for other teams. And same thing with that going against that defense. But it is weird that the Chiefs have the best record, but they're number 9 in point differential. Because they win all these games by like 1 or 2 points, while the Lions have the second best record and the best point differential, and so they're where they're kind of supposed to be. But
yeah,
I was going to say that kind of a rebuttal to you, Dustin. Like, I mean, the record backs you up. Yes, I feel like the Chiefs are the best defense in league, but the luckiest offense. That's just kind of how it seems to me. They're lucky this year. They're 9-0 by a lot of luck and a lot of calls that go their way. But the defense is real and legit, and so that's for sure. They have the best defense, 100%.
I'm not a super Chiefs fan, but I will definitely say luck counts in a few things. Horseshoes, hand grenades, and football, baby. I'll take a W anytime. You know what I'm saying? I do want to throw out, I will actively talk crap to you, Dustin, tonight or tomorrow, when is it? Sunday, when the Chiefs and the Bills play?
Yeah.
I'll hit you in the thread. And we'll see what happens. I think the Bills are cursed, and so you guys will probably come out on top of that game. But it's our next best chance to put a loss on the Chiefs, I feel like. So I'm going to be chatty in that one.
Well,
Yeah,
the Bills are cursed in the postseason, but they have the Chiefs' number in the regular season the last few years. They beat Kansas City in the regular season and then can't beat them when it matters in the playoffs. But so
yeah, I'm excited for that game, and I've said it many times that the Chiefs have this ability that they just play either up or down to the competition. It doesn't matter who they play just as good or just as bad as whoever they're playing and win by a few points. And yeah, Cody, to do a rebuttal to you, like, there's not two teams. It's not the Kansas City offense and then the other team, the Kansas City defense. You know, it's all one team, and they play together. And so, yeah, the defense is great, but they're all part of the same team, and they all contribute to wins. And the Chiefs have proved 3 times you only got to win by a couple points to win the Super Bowl.
And the only thing I'll say, standing in for Cody, is that when you do have these games where you're winning by 1 or 2 points and a couple of things go your way, at some point your luck is going to run out. They're going to lose one of these games, 1 or 2 or 3 of these games. Your luck can only stand out so long that one of these times something's going to go against the Chiefs and they're going to lose 1 or 2 of those games. I don't think the Chiefs are going 17-0, but who knows? So
look, if you bet on 0 every time on roulette, a few times you're going to be right. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And I agree with Scott that they're not like the same kind of unbeatable team. But if Mahomes has the ball and it's late, they are a team that you have to show concern with, like the Patriots. And it does feel like they have had the momentum to be one of those teams that could repeat. You know what I mean? So, but I do think they drop a game here or there.
But adding in DeAndre Hopkins, right? That's that's a big deal, right? They also have a deep ball threat and someone who's on the same level as Travis Kelce in the pass game.
Cody, did you want to add stuff on when you got cut off?
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Are we still talking? Sorry, are we still talking about the Chiefs right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I did or not. I know. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins has impressed me in the last few weeks. I feel like he's still good, but I feel like he's kind of dropped off a little bit. But it seems like he's kind of making a resurgence, and it's probably because of Andy Reid.
The last thing I want to mention in the NFL, at least, is the Dallas Cowboys. Other than the New York Jets, they're the laughingstock, and we'll talk about them later with one of Cody's PTI questions too. But I just think it's hilarious that CeeDee Lamb loses a ball in the sun, right? Goes for the touchdown catch, loses the ball completely in the sun. Jerry Jones says, "You know where the sun is. Adjust," and that's what he said. And so he seems to forget that, you know, you have to switch ends of the field twice a game or something. And the funniest part about this whole thing, did you know there's already blinds on that stadium that they can just push a button and close? Because Taylor Swift and performers they close the blinds because they don't want the sun in their damn face when they're performing, or the moon, or whatever else is out there. They want to feel like the indoor environment, and so they close for performances. But Jerry Jones won't close them for football games because he likes the way it looks when the sun goes through the stadium. Says, I don't care if that means we lose games. I like it. So
I mean, we have to teach all wide receivers astrophysics so that way they're able to avoid the sun. You got to know where not to look.
yeah. So yeah.
It's just incredible that Jerry spent $1 billion on that, never considered maybe turn it.
Yeah. Okay. Anything about college football? Because we've talked a lot about the NFL. We haven't touched on college football yet.
Miami lost.
They did.
They lost and to Georgia Tech, and so I've been liking Georgia Tech this year. They haven't been great, but they're doing better than I thought they would. So it was good to see a close game like that, and I was kind of happy to see how Cam Ward and the team just reacted to a loss. So.
Mm-hmm. There's only 3 undefeated teams left in all of college football. One is obviously Oregon. They look like the best team ever. One is Indiana. They're in the same conference, Big Ten conference. And number 3 is BYU, still undefeated, beating Utah last week.
There's a fourth, actually.
There's a fourth?
Still undefeated.
Was it some weird name school, Madison or something?
Army.
Not Madison.
Is Army still undefeated?
Army is still undefeated.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened before?
Can't win a war.
Whoa! Shout out to the military.
Yeah.
Dustin's hot take of the week.
Okay, so yeah, 4 teams. Army is also undefeated. Yes, sorry.
And that in and of itself is actually somewhat interesting because if Army keeps winning, even though it's against subpar competition, if Boise State loses another game and Army keeps winning, Army could potentially be that
12th seed. I know what he was going to say. Yeah, and that just immediately once again throws problems with the whole playoff scenario, right? Because if Army finishes undefeated, they don't lose a game. Boise State maybe loses 1 or 2, but it's still put into the playoff over an undefeated Army. Then you go back and say, why did we do this? Why did we create a 12-team playoff when an undefeated Army doesn't get in? So, yeah.
Fair play. Cody, you're back.
Yeah, hopefully I heard the last of that. What would you guys say then?
I just finished your thought, Cody. I know where you were going. That maybe Army gets in as the 12th seed, but if they go undefeated and Boise State still gets in, then what's the whole point of this whole playoff situation? Is what I was saying. So.
Frozen again, Cody. Mercer College is 9-1. I want to shout them out. I don't even know who they are, but I see that their record's quite good. That probably, I would say 98% chance that changes when they play Alabama at 12 o'clock on Saturday. So, yeah. Well, there's a few like 8-1, 9-1 teams out there right now. Like a handful of them. So that's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of good teams out there. The funny thing about the SEC in particular is just a bloodbath over there. They're just destroying each other. Georgia's lost 2 games. Alabama's lost 2 games. I think how many of them are still only have 1 loss? Is it just Texas, Tennessee? Those are the only
Texas
2
and
teams that have 1
Tennessee.
loss.
Yeah.
In the whole SEC. And so what's funny is if the favorite, like the team expected to win, wins every SEC game, the SEC championship is going to be between Texas A&M and LSU to go to the playoff. So
that'd be funny.
Yeah, I think it's a cruel irony that all these teams flock to the SEC in order to build up their schedule to prove to the BCS or whoever it was that they should be in these top bowl games, and then bowl games went away, and now they're all slaughtering each other, and 1 or 2 might get into the playoff, and all these teams that went over there to try to show their strength of schedule. Gone.
Yeah. Feeling bad right now about Cody's connection.
Oh, he might be coming back now.
Maybe.
He froze all the way and then disappeared.
Yeah. Anything else about college football?
I'm good.
Next up is talking about college basketball. We're about 2 weeks in to the college basketball season. Not a lot happening yet. A couple of big games here and there. Gonzaga in particular destroyed Georgia, I think, a top 10 matchup. I think they won by almost 40 points. Gonzaga did. So there's a couple of fun things to talk about, but let's just start with mentioning some teams that we think can really compete and win some, be there at the end. Final 16, 8, 4, and the biggest question of all: can UConn pull another one?
I'll jump in. I think. Sorry, Dustin.
Go ahead.
I think that UConn, though they are missing a couple of pieces, that's a really well-coached team that has been well-coached for, a good portion of the decade for basketball. So I think that they're in a good position to continue their success. That's where I would go with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mentioned kind of the two favorites, Gonzaga and UConn, are the ones most likely to be there. I think it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to watch the teams with the major coaching changes, like Arkansas and Kentucky, of course, those changes, and you have about that. But yeah, not much else to add yet until we get deeper into the season.
Yeah, it's obviously really early. Most teams have only played cupcake nobodies so far, except for the few primetime matchups like Kansas and Duke played, I think, a couple nights ago. And looks like the best player in college basketball is a freshman from Duke. I'm trying to remember his name right now. Look it up. Even though they lost it, or it was Duke and Kentucky. That was not Duke and Kansas. And Duke lost to Kentucky in that game. But the best player in college basketball right now is that freshman in Duke, and I'm looking up his name right now. Give me a second. Cooper Flagg.
Yeah. Cooper
Flagg from Duke. Look, a true freshman, like the number 1 rated high school player in the whole country, and he's playing like it. So far in the 3 games, he's averaging 19 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and shooting 44% from the floor. So.
That's historic numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, a nice little white 18-year-old from Maine.
Where basketball players come from.
Yeah.
Them and lobster.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at agenda and Cody trying to talk on offline. I think obviously with him having a lot of connection issues and he may not rejoin at this point.
Right.
The PTI questions from him may have to wait until next week. And hopefully his internet will be much better next week. But his PTI questions were the last item that we had on our agenda. So we've been talking about an hour and almost not even an hour yet, 45 minutes or so. We can end early, but what else do you guys want to talk about sports wise? What do you want to check in about? Any topics that you guys have?
Fight news. An old man is going to fight a young man tomorrow. That's going to happen on Netflix. So if you have it, check out Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul if you're interested. I'm a little disheartened just because I know how fighting works, and young man versus old man experience isn't necessarily something you want to have in the fight game. You do to an extent, and then it's stops working around the age 55 for most human beings. Mike Tyson's a special guy, but he's fighting a guy who has had moderate success in boxing recently and is much younger than him. And he has ulcers that postpone the fight. So that's a rough thing for me to watch. And I'm excited to hopefully see him knock out Jake Paul, even though my mind tells me that's not going to happen. My heart wants it.
Yeah. I'm sure Mike Tyson I'm sure Tyson can throw a punch that would knock out Paul. I'm sure he can throw one punch, but to be able to last a fight with the endurance and keeping the arms up and all of that, in true boxing style for several rounds, that's going to really test him. I'd be interested to see if Jake Paul uses a lot of movement to try to tire him out, what his strategy is, if it's to move. Because if he sits still, then I'd expect Tyson just to land a good one.
Did you watch the exhibition match with him and Roy Jones Jr.?
I don't.
By chance, you can catch it for free. It's on YouTube now, but you can kind of see that Tyson, even though that was an exhibition, he was still moving like a boxer. He didn't just look like an old man. That was 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, but that stuff goes away, man. Like, power is the last thing to go away, but chasing a young man around the ring for 8 rounds is going to be tough. And if Jake Paul has any common sense, that's what he's going to make him do. Make him hop on a treadmill for the majority of the fight and touch him when he gets around you. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the fan culture as much, but I would think that most people want to see Mike Tyson do this.
Yeah.
So I hope that he at least lasts a long time. Ends in goes 7 or 8 rounds, or knocks him out in the 3rd round or something. And I think most people want Mike Tyson to prove he can still do it at almost 60 years old, however he is now. And I think also most people expect it not to happen. So it'd be really fun.
I would say I think most people don't really care who punches Jake Paul in the face. They just
Hey, bro, I'm going to go on record right now and say that young man has done his thing. Like, everybody dislikes him because of his brother, in my opinion. If you watch Jake Paul, he's not as bad as Logan Paul. I'm not a guy that's like watching his podcast or anything. Logan Paul comes off as a shill. Like, I could pay that dude to say anything, and he would say it. His brother, not so much. And he has been boxing professionally for close to 5 years now, and is gonna fight Mike Tyson. That you can't take the respect that away from that. Like, he put the fight together. He's paying Mike Tyson handsomely, put together a Netflix deal to show a boxing fight, which hasn't happened before. And I think that he deserves credit where it's due, but of course we want to watch him get his face smashed in, because he's talking like, hey, I might be a YouTuber, but I'm also a boxer now. And when anybody does that, it's like, hey, stay in your lane, bro. You're not a professional boxer. But he's boxed guys and done well against professional fighters and boxers, even though he's kind of picking dudes at the end of their road and cherry picking fights in a way that people without money can't really do. He's performed in those fights and hasn't lost them. So that can't be lost on us, that this is a 25-year-old who's not out here losing fights all the time against a much older opponent. And so it's not like he doesn't have a chance, and he has put in the work to go and fight these people. And I hope Mike Tyson gets paid, and I hope he doesn't get walked through. That's it. Because it would be a disservice to boxing if Jake Paul walked through him, but it would also, command respect. win, loss, or draw. If he performs well, you deserve respect for performing well against any version of Mike Tyson, who's widely regarded as the best boxer to step in the ring, other than Floyd Mayweather and Muhammad Ali, maybe.
Yeah. Checking in on the Thursday night game right now. It's just about halftime. Commanders are up 7-3, and so the games are behind Yancey there. So Eagles were favored in this game, and no matter what the Commanders do, no matter what they continue to prove, I think most people are still not going to believe in them, even if they end up in the Super Bowl. Like, what are the Commanders doing here? They don't belong here. But their biggest problem throughout most of the season so far has been their defense, and they've held Philadelphia to 3 points in the first half. So that's something that has to be said. Obviously, right now, Jaden Daniels is the runaway leader for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Commanders looking good today and looking good throughout the whole season so far.
I expect the Philly offense to really pick up the tempo in the second half here and get some more points in.
Yeah, I think the Commanders-Eagles thing is, if I could bring back the metaphor of Tyson and Paul, I mean, the Commanders are that team that most people, I think, don't expect to do well, but all of us kind of want to see it, just because of where they, the horrible franchise they've been for 30 years, and now they're doing well. So,
if they bring back the Indian Chief, I got you.
Yeah, that's not as much as some people would like it to happen. It's not going to happen. So
I think a few Indian, like actual Indian people said, "Hey, could we have our chief back? That's a real person." So it seems like the people who are upset about it are a bunch of white people who should shut up and give them their mascot back. Well, who am I to say? I don't know. Maybe it's racist to have an Indian as a mascot. I think it's dumb.
Yeah.
It's
anything else, guys? Yeah. Go ahead, Dustin.
Good.
Oh, I thought you were speaking. Okay. Yeah. I think we're going to end early after an hour of our podcast today. And so next week, let's see, it's the 21st. We'll be checking in on all these topics again, football, basketball, not a lot going on beyond that right now. And so maybe our podcast can be a little shorter. We'll also do Cody's PTI questions next week, as long as his internet is living. So, all right. Thanks everyone, and have a good night.
Sweet.